Not to make a really average result into content, but I took part in the 640 packs WGP Singapore Season 2 with my best pal, Orfist. I went 5-3, including a bye, and wanted to share a bit about the deck and the experience, because I think a lot of people have been interested in the deck recently and may struggle to understand it, because it does play a little differently from many other decks in the format or the Divine Z era in general if you are a newer player. First, I will show you the list, why I think Orfist has a fighting chance into the current metagame, some plays you can make that aren't immediately obvious, and a tournament report if you care about that. Now, to note, I'll be going over the combo lines and whatnot as if you know the general idea of Orfist cards, but if you need more explanation, I've linked a note to the creator of this deck in the description. Please read that. Even if you know how to play Orfist already, I think it's still a fantastic resource. With that, let's fist. Orfist recently got a bump in popularity and power in the form of its New World Order, Boundary of Twilight. This card lets you draw 1 on place, and if your Vanguard is Orfist, allows you to create a Shadow Army token. This is a huge deal because it turns on your Dark Knight from turn 1. That's where you have fantastic grade 1 options such as the PR Refilog, who can search your many worlds or grade 3s in the deck, and the new Cardinal, Dalcomanis, who mills any world from your deck on place. They both require Dark Knight at the bare minimum, so this makes your grade 1 game going second far stronger than it was before this PR, where there was no grade 1 world. Now, I chose Orfist for the tournament as opposed to other off-meta strategies because I found that it had the best options going both first and second. And as you can see from my tournament report, I lost more die rolls than I had won, so leveraging a potent Mask Persona turn plus a grade 1 rush, or the Shadow Army tokens hitting into 10k bases going first, makes for a pretty well-rounded game plan. Not to mention, Regis is surprisingly potent with enough worlds, meaning you don't immediately lose to bricking on mask pieces, though you'd still like to see it. Many of the top decks also have a certain spike come around turn 5, where even though their power on paper doesn't scale up, the amount that they have filtered means trigger chance is slowly rising. Decks like Virgilla, Buffs, Toys, and Astasiod have great filter potential, and the longer that the game goes on, the more susceptible you are to getting over-triggered, or any other kind of bad trigger luck. Orfist intends to win by turn 4 and has the numbers to kind of back this game plan up, but it does possess a pretty flawed grind game. This means if you make it to turn 5-ish, you tend to lose anyways, so the deck aims to not get there. It minimizes the chance your opponent's slow filtering gets to reap its rewards. And finally, as a Brandgate deck, you do have the nice threat of Elder Breath that lurks around, being able to swing a game just from its check offensively. It's the second or third best nationality after all, depending on how you evaluate Bless Favor, and it can win games on its own. That's gotta count for something. That is not to say that the deck is not without its flaws. The deck has a really rough hand size, and even if you manage to get off every draw world, plus a bunch of Polar Axis procs, sometimes your hand is just full of worlds and Orfists you just can't guard with. And if you miss enough worlds, your power is very shoddy, your hand can be cloggy early, and your turn 2 pressure depends highly on having a world for that turn. Bricking on the mask, and you can still aim for like a quick kill with Rages, but if you brick on the worlds, the game is over. Finally, although the grind game isn't much of a problem because we're not gonna get there, if you do, you are in a little bit of trouble. Many times you will extend far to push your tokens to be as big as possible, and in doing so, you will run out of resources to guard with or follow up the clapback. Mass removal like Bafsagra is a major threat too. While not the end of the world, it can lower your aggression. In my second Buffs game, I was forced into a really bad grind game that carried on until turn 6, which gave my opponent enough time to find his PGs and have Dragvita in his hand, so I could only win from checking Elder Breath in my 5-card deck. It's a tense scenario, you can win, but it's difficult. So it's not a perfect deck, but I didn't want to bring in a perfect deck. I'm just glad I could achieve some wins with an off-meta strategy into some pretty heavy hitters. So with that, I'm gonna go over some decision points I think matter a lot. I'll be kind of going over this rapid fire, so just replay what you need to digest. Firstly is the Mulligan. No matter what, hard Mulligan for your grade 1s in Delcomanis and Refilog. These are going to pack a punch on turn 1. You can create 18k lines to force your opponent to burn triggers early to guard, or make a tri-lane that forces overguards or high damage counts. Additionally, make sure you have the world for turn 2. Your turn 1 world is always going to be Twilight, but trying to have the second world is important as well. The Shadow Army spawner in particular can be great for early aggression in the same way Artisaria's Luminoil is. And regardless, just having something to make your Vanguard a 15k attacker to make triggers unsafe, or to let your Grade 1 chumps hit through 10k bases. These are the key tempo plays you're going to need to achieve quick victories on this deck. Going second, it's pretty obvious to try and find the mask pieces as well. Keep has of Orfist Mask or the Mask of Hydrogum itself. And then from there, I try to mulligan my hands based on the initial draws. If I am going first, I do not prioritize Orfist Mask very highly. I mulligan for Worlds, Polar Axis, and ways to get the Worlds into rotations over the Mask of Hydrogum, even mulliganing it away if I see fit. Your goal is to set up 4 Worlds by turn 3 and then use Rages on 3 rather than going straight for the Mask play, then use the Mask for a Persona Ride. I use this in my games first like Hari or Babs, so that I could save a Persona Ride for turn 4. Then, there's going to be some situations in the game that I think are optimal that I think you should know about. So, obviously you want to use Delcomanis and Raphalog to find the pieces you need. I recommend, as a rule of thumb, to always get an Overcoming and Eternity into rotation. You need a lot of power to threaten your opponents quickly, and having 1 set up early is good, having 2 is ideal. Aim for this always, get it into rotation however you can. Raphalog can add Worlds if you're missing the turn 2 one, or the Mask piece, so you have to decide in the situation. In my game versus Rezael going second, Raphalog negate the Worlds pieces and I found the other half of my Mask package I needed to win on 3. You can maximize your probability with some good sequencing. Use Raphalog first if you just need to get any world into your hand, whether it be to discard or to play on 2, then Delcomanis can mill the ones that aren't as urgent, so go Raphalog 1, Delcomanis 2. Or, do it the other way around if you need to find the mask pieces. Have Delcomanis mill the worlds out of the deck so that you have a higher chance of seeing the mask pieces in these searches. Don't just blindly throw these down. Try your best to maximize your probabilities even for early searches like this. This will matter over the course of a game. A 1% or a 2% thing doesn't seem that important in the now, but over the course of 9 rounds, you kind of want to make sure that you're rolling the dice as weighted as possible. We don't really play for card advantage value with this deck, which kind of seems weird because card advantage is a really important thing in a lot of other decks, and in the game in general, and other games, but for an aggressive Orfist strategy, you're going to need to kill that voice in your head that wants to maximize value. I know it is tempting to see Polar Axis say, if your Vanguard is Orfist, and keep it in your hand until turn 3. If you don't already have a world that is ready to set, just call him so you can inflict some early damage or chip away at your opponent's hand. Call over your Delcomanis with Twilight skill or other units in your hand if it means you can get another Shadow Army token with its Drop Zone skill. Call Orfist Mask to the front row if you think your hand sucks too much to survive past the Grade 3 turn and you have no mask ready. Who cares? On Orfist Mask, I often remove Rages from the Soul to set an Eternity before Soul Blasting to call an army with the Twilight. Is it less resource efficient? Yes. Does it make my Shadow Army a bit bigger, hitting 35k unboosted on a Mask Persona Ride to hit through the effect front guard? Also yes. This grind of resources will matter in a longer game, but we don't really want to be there anyways, so you might as well maximize your power in the now. As a general rule I find, when you play these off-meta decks, which are off-meta for a very good reason, you cannot play safe. You need to win, not to not lose. Which kind of brings me to the Regalis piece of choice, Shroud in Darkness. Fire Regalis is pretty common as is twin cast, but I found this card great in the rare grind games that allows for recoup versus resources. Here is a sequence that I did to win a game versus the buff Sagra with Shroud. My only 2 orders are Eternities, and I don't have any follow-up in my hand except for Shroud and Orfist Rages. So, at the start of the turn, you ride down to Orfist Rages, setting one of the draw worlds from your drop zone. Then with the Shroud in the Darkness, you call Polar Axis and Raphalog from the drop. Both cards can be placed from anywhere to proc their effects. Polar Axis then sets a world, then Raphalog digs through my small deck, gives me Orfist Mask for Persona Ride, and with Orfist Mask I set 1 more world. This gives me 2 more attacks, one of which is a full column with only 3 worlds milled, while I still have 2 Eternities up, which I don't mill for Orfist Mask skill because the numbers are a little nicer if you have 2 up at all times. This kind of crazy explosion button is great in games where you're being stretched thin, and early turns where you have to explode and reuse Raphalog or reuse Polar Axis just to get a crumb more value out. I don't really find a reason to use Twin Cast to live longer because I don't really want to, and Fire Regalis' consistency is good, but At the end of the day, it is kind of a preference, just do what you want to do. Finally, let's do the tournament report. Again, I only went like 5-3 and one of them was a bye, so my advice may not be the best, but I did claw through some tough decks, so I think it's a valuable experience to share. Game 1, I am up against the new Heartluru Toys deck. This deck triggers a lot, because it has a filtering order, and it's Bunny that filters a card off of the deck. So you want to account for a couple triggers per battle phase. They are not sacking you, it's part of their game plan. If they get what they want, they check a ton of triggers because their deck is filtered a lot. It's the same for Live and Berry, you gotta account for it. Now, 2 toy orders are guaranteed via the right line, so that's okay. What did suck was me knocking the next 2 into his damage zone with a crit, letting him use Giant Flux to get it back, no effort needed on his part. I make it to my Orfist Mask turn, but afterwards they live with a timely front into draw damage trigger and double crit me to win. That's not a great way to start your WGP tournament, but this is something to consider. I already knew toys would be very popular. I practiced a lot versus this deck with my training partner and was wiped pretty often unless I had good RNG. It's a new deck from a new set that's really affordable and hyped up a ton. And I still locked in Orfist because I wanted to. So I was hoping to avoid this matchup a lot, but it is a silly hope. You kind of gotta understand matchups are bad. Still, I got aggressive, I punched where I could, but at the end of the day, luck wasn't there. Now, game 2. You can kind of tell what kind of opponent you're up against from the start of the game. The Kamikat Mirai sleeves, the Hikari Price Generator. You just know this guy is on buff Sagra. You just can feel it. And luckily, I win the die roll. I'm aggressive from the get-go, going for large columns over early tri-lanes to nullify the defenses, which he does get, and with a good RNG check, I get 4 orders in by the Rage's turn, meaning I get 2 Shadow Armies to attack with. So, with only 1 Mask Ride in my hand ready, I keep it for turn 4, and I make 5 attacks with Rages. This breaks away at enough of his hand, giving him 4 damage on the turn 4, letting me get to Orfist Mask and force him to do a 2 to pass on the Vanguard swing, which I break with a double critical. If my last opponent can double critical me, I can double crit someone as well. On Orfist, you are playing on very thin margins. If you don't have a way to win through the grind game, put those triggers on center and then break through. There's a pretty good chance that they have accounted for you only pulling 1 trigger anyways and will guard through your next attacks and then kill you. So just put it on center. It's not sacking, it's a skill. Game 3, Regalis. I lose the die roll and I'm made to go second, and I see the Archangel. It's not so bad to go second at Regalis. I can make aggressive columns early, and with my ace unit I get whatever cards I need. And they missed their grade 1 Alden right line. They try to use Nilberis to draw out, and a lot of triggers go to damage zone early as well. So on turn 3, I Persona Ride into Orfist Mask and I push him from 4 to 6. He never makes it to Vita, he never makes it to Divine Skill because he's going first. It's hard to push through Regalis with a Divine Skill, and he does have some counter aggression, but he just never found it. Game 4, Toys. I lose the die roll again, but my opponent isn't having too much luck aside from that. Aside from finding every order, they are whiffing some bunnies and some top 5s, and their triple drives are mostly blank. They couldn't even form the board of Regalis and Giant Fluff. So by turn 4, I Persona Ride Orfist Mask again even though I went second, and I get to lethal 6 damage heal trigger, followed by Valnut to win the game through my 1 PG and 1 Elementaria in my hand for the last 2 attacks. Incredibly tilting game. It's so bad my opponent said sorry and I felt like shit. Remember what I said about getting used to toys filtering? Well, they barely filtered and it still happened. Still, it is Cardfight Vanguard. I steam a bit, I move on, and I acknowledge the fact that I cannot top anymore, but that's nothing new to me, so I just do my best. In game 5, I am up against Hari. I lose the die roll, and I'm made to go first by the Stride deck. He flips Happiness Collector, and I know what I'm in for. Hari is one of the rare Stride decks that has never been meta-dominant, but it'll still easily outgrind me if it gets to the point. With his early clockwise Gangram column, we're trading damage pretty fast early. By turn 3, he's already at 4 damage. My hand is pee-pee poo-poo bad if it comes to survival, so I aim to kill him. There's no other option. His hand is tiny because he doesn't see his energy cyclers, so with 5 attacks from Rages, a critical trigger to overcome his own heal trigger, and him being about 5k guard off, I end the game before he even rides his grade 3. Strike decks do seem to struggle into this kind of pace with Orfist, so I thought I was favored from the get-go. Round 6. Boy! I get a bye. Round 7, Buff Sagra. Round 2 against the boogeyman of the format. One of them, anyways. This Bobs had already taken down a friend of mine on Vagilla before, and I know him as a pretty decent player, so I did want to win. I win the die roll, but with some lucky damage triggers and heals, he's at a pretty comfortable 3 damage by his turn 3. But he can only make one of the restanders, Yugameshed, with a Fire Regalis off EB7, so that tells me his hand kind of blows. With Buff Sagra's retire game, and Orfist Mask removing my Twilights, I am kind of running thin on ways to make good units on the board. It's so bad that by turn 5 I was attacking with Polar Axes on a rear guard, and then Raphilock boosted by a heal trigger. And Orfist Mask himself was boosted by a critical trigger I had called over Delcomanus to get him into the drop zone. But his resources were not much better after using Shadow Armies to take out his restanders, and him being able to find the one-off Verlord. So on turn 6, he guards my Persona Ride Orfist Mask after the sequence I mentioned earlier with Drag Vita, holding 2 more perfect guards for the next 2 Shadow Army tokens. And with 5 cards left in my deck, I check Elder Breath and I win. This is the most exciting match I've ever had in any tournament. My skills were really tested and I felt like all my decision points were rewarded. It felt really good to be beating one of the best decks in the format with a rogue pick like this. And then in round 8 I get fisted. I'm up against Shiranui, I lose the die roll, I go first. Remember what I said about strike decks not having a good matchup into Orfist aggression? I fucking lied, I got cooked. I got no worlds early, no early units, my whole hand is grade 3s and triggers. His early aggression is even better than mine with Ford and the Shenris. He strides Magan Tembu, all Shadow Armies are 15 to guard when they are dominated, and he checks Valnod to kill me. 5-3. And I barely even got to play that last game. It was a sour end, but I still had a good time. From that match report, I hope you understand the pros this deck has and where it may struggle into the format. I think it's good into Buff Sagra, which I know many players are either on or trying to plan around, but I also think it's rewarding and fun to play with. In some scant locals, I found myself being able to keep up with decks like Virgilla and Blankmire, so I was hoping to run into those in WGP instead of the toys deck that just came out and costs like $40 to build. I don't know why I expected that. That's not how money works and that's not how people think. Still, I had a really good time. It is my best touring run and I hope to keep more off-meta viable picks at my disposal for future events. I hope you enjoyed the ramblings of someone who, in essence, had a very average scoreline, and I do hope you learned something, and I hope to see more Orfist in the future. Bye-bye!